Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into the story of Regular Show, I'd love to know where in the world are you watching from tonight? And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical, seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up, let's begin. In the world of Regular Show, the park is more than just a workplace. It is not only grass, trees, and buildings, it is something alive. A breathing space where the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary, and where the flow of time itself seems to loosen, stretch, and ripple. The park is a stage, but not the kind built of wood and curtains. It is a stage made of clouds drifting slowly overhead, of benches that have heard countless conversations, of vending machines that hum with secret awareness. The air carries a subtle vibration, like a faint echo of music that no one remembers starting. Every corner of this place hides the possibility of awakening. A simple rake leaning against a wall might come alive. A humble arcade cabinet in the storage shed could open into another world. Even the grass beneath their feet seems to carry whispers of forgotten stories. This is why the park feels different. It does not obey the rules of ordinary reality. It shifts and bends, moving like a dream that changes shape depending on where you look. And yet there is a calmness in this strangeness. It does not scream, it does not overwhelm. Instead, it feels like drifting deeper into sleep, where logic loosens, but peace remains. Mordecai and Rigby wander through this landscape not like employees, but like travelers caught between waking and dreaming. They clock in, they push brooms, they pretend to work, but the park itself seems to guide them, gently, into situations far beyond chores. One moment they may be setting up chairs for a birthday party. The next, they are falling through portals or confronting objects that suddenly speak with booming voices. And through it all, the park does not resist. It invites, it breathes. It carries them along as though every blade of grass and every gust of wind is part of some larger, unseen rhythm. The atmosphere is strange, but not frightening. In most stories, when objects awaken or time bends, the effect is uncanny, even terrifying. But here, the tone is softer. The surrealism carries warmth. The impossible events are often absurd, humorous, or strangely serene. A monster may appear, yes, but it often looks more like an exaggerated cartoon than a nightmare. The danger never lingers too long. The park resets itself, gently returning everything to a calm baseline. This rhythm, the swelling of chaos and the quieting return to stillness, is what makes the park feel alive. It is like the rhythm of breathing itself. Inhale, exhale, expand, contract. A cycle of strangeness and calm. And Mordecai and Rigby float within that cycle like dreamers drifting on waves. They never seem entirely surprised by the transformations around them, nor entirely afraid. Instead, they embody the way a dreamer accepts the strangest events without question. A car turning into a monster, a lawnmower sparking into battle. These are simply parts of the landscape, and the park, always breathing, always alive, accepts these contradictions with serenity. What makes this atmosphere truly calming is not the absence of chaos, but the way the chaos is wrapped in familiarity. The characters remain grounded. They bicker, they laugh, they complain about their boss. Even when a cosmic event explodes above them, they remain themselves. And this human grounding makes the surrealism less threatening and more dreamlike. It is as if the park itself is a dream shared between them, a dream that never tips into nightmare. The park holds a peculiar stillness, a kind of waiting silence, as if it knows more than it shows. On the surface, it is simple. a playground, a fountain, a collection of ordinary benches and trees. But beneath that surface, it hums with a hidden life. Think of how the sunlight filters through the branches here, the way it flickers, as though it is not merely light, but memory itself gently cascading downward. Even the shadows seem softer, more forgiving, bending into shapes that feel intentional, as if the park is arranging them for some unseen purpose. There are moments when you can almost imagine the park inhaling. The rustling of leaves becomes the sound of breath. The creaking of swings echoes like the stretching of limbs. Even the vending machines, with their constant buzzing, contribute to this sense of pulse, of hidden lungs expanding and contracting. For Mordecai and Rigby, this breathing is not always obvious, but it is felt. It shapes their days, pulling them out of routine without warning. When they expect silence, the park offers noise. When they expect boredom, the park offers challenge. It is a living rhythm, guiding them gently into the surreal. And yet the most calming aspect of this living stage is its constancy. No matter how wild the events become, the park remains. Like a dreamer's bed, it holds them even as their imaginations scatter. They may be pulled into space, into other dimensions, into battles with the absurd. But eventually the park exhales, and they are returned. Returned to the grass, returned to the bench, returned to the place that is both workplace and dream. Consider the fountain at the center. On some days, it is only water, shimmering quietly in the sun. On other days, it feels like a portal, rippling with reflections that don't quite match the world around them. If you stare long enough, you might swear the ripples form patterns, signals, perhaps even messages. The park never explains these things. It simply presents them, calmly, without demand. This is what gives the park its calming surrealism. It does not force itself upon you. It drifts into awareness, like a passing thought you might notice just before sleep, a shift in color, a faint sound, a shadow that seems to move a second too late. All tiny reminders that the place is more than what it appears to be. Mordecai and Rigby respond to this in their own ways. Mordecai, more reflective, sometimes seems to sense the dreamlike quality more directly. He will pause, guitar in hand, eyes tilted toward the sky, caught in a quiet thought. Rigby, by contrast, crashes forward, oblivious, restless, but carried all the same. Their differences do not disturb the rhythm of the park. They complement it. One drifts, one stumbles, but both are caught within the same breathing current. And so the park becomes a mirror of their existence. Neither boy nor bird, neither raccoon nor worker, fully belongs to the real world. They exist in the liminal space, just like the park itself, always at the edge of waking, always at the edge of dreaming. The true magic of the park is not in its monsters, its battles, or its sudden transformations. The magic is in how naturally those events fit within the calm fabric of its reality. Surrealism here does not feel like rupture. It feels like continuation, a conversation that began quietly and only became stranger the longer you listened. This is why the park feels safe, even in its strangest moments. It is not a nightmare space. It is not a trap. It is simply alive, curious, playful, and infinite. It expands to contain the chaos and contracts again to deliver calm. The park breathes, and as it breathes, it invites us to breathe with it. What makes the park so unusual is how it balances two realities at once. To a stranger passing by, it looks ordinary. A patch of land, some scattered buildings, a fountain, and a few tired employees. Nothing remarkable. And yet, for those who spend time inside its borders, reality begins to ripple. The ground itself seems to shift under different moods. Some days the grass looks impossibly green, glowing like a field painted in memory. Other days it feels dull, heavy as though the park has grown tired, sighing in muted colors. Even weather behaves strangely here. Rain might pour heavily in one corner, while sunshine lingers on the other. Lightning may crack in the distance only to vanish without sound. The sky above often feels less like an atmosphere and more like a curtain, sometimes drawn open, sometimes drawn shut. For Mordecai and Rigby, these shifts are simply part of life. They do not question why the world bends around them, because questioning would slow them down. Instead, they drift forward, taking the changes as they come, as if they were no stranger than waking up to find a new dream waiting each night. And yet there are moments when the surreal edges into stillness, and the stillness itself becomes profound. Imagine Mordecai sitting on a bench after a long day. The park is quiet. The breeze carries the smell of cut grass and something older, something faintly electric. The shadows stretch longer, curling toward him like slow-moving waves. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. In that stillness, the park feels less like a workplace and more like a friend, an unseen companion breathing alongside him. Rigby experiences the same spaces differently. He may notice the oddness less, but he feels it nonetheless. His restless energy, his inability to sit still, contrasts beautifully with the park's calm pulse. He darts from tree to tree, from vending machine to fountain, never fully aware that the world around him is shifting in response. And yet, even his chaos fits within the park's design. His energy is another rhythm, another heartbeat folded into the larger breathing pattern. This coexistence of stillness and chaos, of awareness and oblivion, is the park's true nature. It does not demand order, nor does it collapse into disorder. It floats in between, in the same liminal space that dreams occupy. It allows strangeness without terror, calmness without emptiness. Sometimes the park feels like a story being told, though no one remembers who the narrator is. Objects awaken to deliver lessons that dissolve just as quickly. Portals appear not to transport, but to remind that reality is never fixed. Battles are fought, but the outcomes never scar the landscape for long. The park erases fear the same way a dream erases detail when you wake. What lingers is not the chaos itself, but the feeling of having been somewhere unusual, somewhere meaningful. Even the simplest features of the park carry this quality. The playground, with its swings and slides, feels less like equipment and more like an echo of childhood. The paths, winding and uncertain, seem to rearrange themselves depending on who walks them. The storage shed, filled with forgotten tools, often feels like a chest of secrets, waiting to open into something far larger than it appears. All of these spaces fold into one another, like scenes of a dream shifting without warning. And yet, the park never loses its identity. It never becomes unrecognizable. It is always itself, always breathing, always waiting. And through it all, Mordecai and Rigby remain at its center. Not masters of this world, but not victims either. They are companions to the park, drifting with its rhythm, embodying the strange truth that the ordinary can become extraordinary, and that the extraordinary can feel somehow completely ordinary. The park is alive, but it is not loud. It does not announce itself. It hums in the background, like the low static of a television left on in another room. You might not notice it directly, but you feel its presence in every detail, every shift, every echo. The longer you stay, the clearer it becomes. The park is not just where their stories take place. The park is the story. The deeper you look at the park, the more it feels less like a location and more like a mind, one that thinks slowly, patiently, with each season acting as another thought passing by. In summer, the air feels heavy, thick with possibility. Colors are brighter, the sounds of insects and birds layering into a constant hum that blurs into music if you listen long enough. In autumn, the trees shed not only their leaves, but also their moods, scattering fragments of memory across the ground. Even winter, with its stark coldness, feels dreamlike here, as though the park has paused its breathing, holding everything in suspended silence until spring allows it to exhale once more. This shifting mood of the park seeps into Mordecai and Rigby's lives. Their adventures often echo the park's changing tone. On bright days, their chaos is playful, turning chores into competitions, slacking off into spontaneous games. On stormy days, the mood tilts stranger, and the surreal edges closer. Video games come alive, objects rebel, or cosmic forces make themselves known. Yet no matter how far the strangeness stretches, the park never abandons its balance. The inhale is always followed by the exhale. The storm always ends. What truly defines the park's dreamlike calm is its refusal to cling. Nightmares, in the traditional sense, trap you. They hold you tightly until you wake. But the park never holds. Its chaos is brief, its intensity fleeting. Like ripples in water, the distortions fade quickly, leaving behind only stillness. And in that stillness, Mordecai and Rigby laugh, sigh, or simply continue on with their day. This cycle, wildness followed by rest, creates a strange comfort for the viewer. We are invited into a world where surreal events unfold freely, but we are never stranded inside them. We are always guided back to a soft, familiar center. Even the characters around Mordecai and Rigby seem to share in this rhythm. Benson, Pops, and Skips, Muscle Man, all of them carry their own eccentricities, yet they too are folded into the park's breathing. Arguments flare, responsibilities pile up, mistakes spiral out of control, but by the end, everything settles. The park seems to insist on it. It will not allow tension to remain forever. Its breath draws conflict in and releases it again, as naturally as lungs releasing air. To watch this is to experience a kind of meditative loop. You see chaos swell, then dissolve. You see friendship falter, then repair. You see the surreal invade and then retreat. The cycle is never broken. And within that cycle lies the comfort. The knowledge that no matter how strange, how absurd, or how impossible the situation becomes, peace will return. The park is not only the backdrop for Mordecai and Rigby's adventures, it is the very essence of their story. It is the liminal space that allows the surreal to exist without fear. It is the bridge between childhood imagination and adult responsibility. It is the place where time bends, objects awaken, and the extraordinary feels gentle. And when the day is done, when the battles are over, the mistakes forgiven, the laughter echoing into the evening, the park returns to silence. The grass rests. The fountain reflects the stars. The swings dangle quietly, waiting for the breeze to set them moving once more. In these final moments, the park feels less like a workplace, less like a stage, and more like a dream we are invited to share. A dream that breathes, a dream that calms, a dream that never truly ends. At the center of Regular Show lies not just a park, not just a job, but a friendship. Messy, loud, uneven, and yet strangely soothing. Mordecai and Rigby are not the kind of friends you read about in neat, polished stories. They are imperfect, unbalanced, and often frustrating. Mordecai, with his cautious nature and quiet ambitions, tries to lean toward responsibility, though he is constantly pulled away from it. Rigby, impulsive and reckless, sprints headlong into chaos without thinking twice. Together they form a rhythm, one that is jagged, irregular, and entirely their own. It is this rhythm, paradoxically, that brings calm. Watching them stumble through their days is like hearing the crackling of an old radio. The signal is never clear, the static never fully gone, but the sound becomes strangely comforting. The more you listen, the more it begins to feel like music. Friendship, after all, does not need to be perfect to be steady. In fact, Mordecai and Rigby's friendship thrives precisely because of its flaws. They argue often. They make mistakes. They procrastinate until the last possible moment. And yet, no matter how many times they fight, no matter how many errors pile up, they always drift back toward one another. This drifting is its own rhythm. Chaos, conflict, return. Like the park's breathing, their friendship also inhales and exhales. It swells with tension, then relaxes with forgiveness. It contracts under stress, then expands with laughter. The cycle repeats endlessly, and in that repetition lies its comfort. Think of how their adventures begin, rarely with intention, rarely with careful planning. More often, it starts with boredom. A long afternoon. A task too dull to complete. Mordecai sighs, Rigby complains, and then in that lull, something tilts. A choice is made. Press the wrong button, ignore the warning, open the box labeled, "Do not open." And suddenly, reality bends. What makes these moments calming, rather than frightening, is the bond between them. Alone, perhaps, the strangeness would overwhelm, but together, it becomes manageable, even funny. The rhythm of their friendship softens the surreal, turning danger into a shared experience, absurdity into inside jokes. It is important to notice that the show rarely punishes them with lasting consequences. Their mistakes are not erased, but they are forgiven. Their recklessness is not celebrated, but it is understood. And this too creates calm. In this world, friendship is elastic. It stretches, it bends, it frays at the edges, but it does not break. Watching them is like watching two children navigating a dream. They are not wise, not careful, not particularly skilled, but they have each other, and that is enough. The park, with all its strange breathing rhythm, seems to respond to their bond. It carries them together, never allowing one to drift too far from the other. There is a certain comfort in this imperfection. A reminder that friendship is not about flawless harmony, but about endurance, about surviving mistakes together, about finding laughter in the middle of chaos. And so the rhythm of Mordecai and Rigby's friendship becomes a lullaby of sorts, not smooth or polished, but steady, an irregular, imperfect song that repeats itself endlessly, soothing not because it is perfect, but because it is familiar. Mordecai and Rigby's rhythm is not symmetrical, yet that is what makes it so alive. Mordecai often wants to move forward, toward responsibility, toward maturity, toward something beyond the park. Rigby, by contrast, clings to the present, pulling him back into laziness, into mischief, into refusal. These opposing movements create tension, but also balance. Without Rigby, Mordecai might drift too quickly toward seriousness, losing the spark of play that fuels their adventures. Without Mordecai, Rigby might spiral into chaos without anchor. Together, they become something in between, drifting, unstable, but strangely peaceful. Their friendship works the way a pendulum swings. One pushes, the other resists, and in the middle of that struggle lies motion. Back and forth, argument and reconciliation, misstep and forgiveness. This constant swinging becomes the rhythm of their lives, and over time, it becomes the rhythm of the show itself. The most striking part of their bond is how little it depends on success. They fail often, spectacularly, comically. Their plans collapse. Their shortcuts backfire. Their jobs nearly cost them everything again and again, and yet none of this breaks them. Their failures become moments to laugh at later, or stories to retell. Friendship for them is not tied to achievement. It is tied to presence. Simply being there, even in failure, is enough. Consider the many times Mordecai scolds Rigby, or when Rigby's recklessness put them both in danger. In another story, this might create a rift too deep to heal. But here, the anger cools quickly. They drift back to one another with the same inevitability that the park drifts back into stillness after chaos. Forgiveness is not a dramatic event. It is simply the default. This cycle feels almost meditative. Conflict does not linger. It flares, burns briefly, then fades. What remains is the familiarity of two flawed beings who cannot exist apart for long. Watching them, one feels reassured that mistakes are survivable, that imperfection does not end connection. And in this way, their friendship mirrors the breathing rhythm of the park itself. The inhale is their chaos, arguments, accidents, reckless impulses. The exhale is their calm, apologies, laughter, a return to ordinary tasks. Together, these breaths create a loop that is endless, yet never dull. What makes this rhythm especially calming is its reliability. The viewer knows deep down that no matter how wild the conflict becomes, no matter how much Rigby messes up, or how frustrated Mordecai grows, the cycle will complete. They will return to balance. The friendship will hold. And in a world that often feels uncertain, this reliability becomes its own kind of comfort. Even their banter, so casual, so filled with teasing and complaints, adds to this sense of calm. It is not polished dialogue, not heroic speeches. It is the sound of two friends who know each other so well that even their arguments carry affection. Like static on the radio, the noise of their bickering becomes part of the background hum. Annoying, maybe, but never threatening. Always familiar. It is here that the surrealism of the show becomes less about monsters or dimensions and more about companionship itself. Because what could be more surreal than a friendship so flawed, yet so unbreakable? What could be stranger and at the same time more soothing than two beings who continually test each other's patience, only to always circle back to laughter? This is the rhythm of Mordecai and Rigby. Not steady, not predictable in the moment, but eternal in its return. One of the quiet truths of Mordecai and Rigby's friendship is that it is not about compatibility, but about endurance. They are not perfect matches. They frustrate one another constantly. Mordecai wants to move forward. Rigby wants to stay behind. Mordecai longs for stability. Rigby thrives in disorder. Yet despite this imbalance, they remain tethered. And that tether, invisible yet unbreakable, is what gives their relationship its surreal calm. When they argue, the air around them vibrates with frustration. Mordecai's patience frays, Rigby's defensiveness sharpens, and for a moment it seems as though the bond might snap. But it never does. The cycle plays out again and again. Conflict, explosion, collapse, reconciliation. Like the rhythm of waves crashing against a shore, their arguments feel inevitable, but so does the peace that follows. This constant pattern creates a sense of reassurance. Watching them stumble through mistakes is never unbearable, because we know the story will always bend back toward forgiveness. And forgiveness here is not grand or ceremonious. It is casual, almost lazy. A shrug, a laugh, a return to normal as if the fight never happened. Their rhythm tells us that relationships do not need to be flawless to endure. They only need to bend, to give, to return. This is why boredom is such an important element in their story. Most of their adventures begin not with ambition, but with a lack of direction. A long afternoon stretches ahead, too empty, too quiet, and in that space, something sparks, a reckless idea, a careless mistake. Chaos follows, surrealism spirals, and the park awakens in strange new ways. But at the root of it all is friendship, boredom transformed into bonding. What might destroy other pairs becomes a source of connection for them. Their laziness, their procrastination, their constant avoidance of work. These flaws do not tear them apart. Instead, they become rituals, shared behaviors that deepen the rhythm. When they ignore a task together, it feels less like failure and more like solidarity. Two dreamers choosing chaos over order together. There is a beauty in how small choices become cosmic consequences in their world. A button pressed, a warning ignored, a shortcut taken, and suddenly they are battling monsters or drifting through other dimensions. Yet even in the face of the absurd, their reactions ground the experience. Mordecai groans, Rigby panics, and somehow they stumble forward. The surrealism never swallows them whole because their friendship acts as an anchor. Perhaps this is why their rhythm feels calming rather than stressful. The park may breathe, reality may bend, but Mordecai and Rigby's bond remains steady. It is not steady in the sense of harmony. It is steady in its ability to reset. No matter how broken things become, they always return to the same place, together. This cycle mirrors life in subtle ways. Many friendships in reality are imperfect, filled with flaws and arguments. And yet the ones that endure are not the ones without conflict, but the ones that can breathe through it. In this sense, Mordecai and Rigby's rhythm feels universal. It reminds us that relationships are not defined by absence of failure, but by the presence of return. And so their story takes on a meditative quality. We watch them argue, laugh, fail, succeed, repeat, again and again. It becomes predictable, but not dull, familiar, but never lifeless. Like a song we've heard countless times, but still hum along with, because the rhythm is so deeply embedded in us. This is the essence of their friendship. Imperfect, irregular, yet deeply soothing in its endless return. To fully understand Mordecai and Rigby's bond, one must see how it extends beyond laughter, beyond arguments, into something quieter, presence. No matter the situation, they are rarely apart. Whether mowing the lawn, battling surreal creatures, or simply lying on the couch doing nothing at all, the rhythm of their friendship is measured not by activity, but by proximity. They orbit each other constantly, even when annoyed, even when exhausted. Their togetherness becomes its own kind of meditation. There are times when Mordecai seeks more. He dreams of romance, of responsibility, of a life that stretches beyond the park. These longings create tension, especially with Rigby, who resists change, clinging to immaturity with stubborn hands. And yet, even in these moments of imbalance, the tether holds. Mordecai cannot leave Rigby behind, not fully. And Rigby, though fearful of being abandoned, always finds Mordecai drifting back toward him. The cycle persists, irregular yet eternal. This rhythm is echoed in the surreal adventures they share. When the ordinary tilts into the impossible, they react in harmony, even if their methods differ. Rigby flails wildly. Mordecai steadies himself with cautious focus. One overreacts, the other underreacts, but together they create balance. Like two mismatched instruments playing at once, the music they create is not perfect, yet strangely soothing. What makes their friendship so calming is its refusal to fracture. The stakes rise, monsters appear, dimensions collapse. Yet the bond remains unshaken. Even when tested, it bends instead of breaking. Viewers instinctively know, no matter how bizarre the situation becomes, the friendship will survive. This assurance transforms chaos into comfort, surrealism into serenity. The humor of their bond also carries this soothing quality. Their jokes are not polished or witty, but messy and repetitive. Rigby mocks, Mordecai sighs, and the loop continues. These exchanges become ritual, as steady as the park's breathing. They ground the surreal events, reminding us that no matter how strange the adventure, the essence of their connection is familiar, human, and ordinary. There is also a strange tenderness beneath their antics. Though they rarely admit it, their loyalty runs deep. Mordecai saves Rigby from his recklessness time and again. Rigby, despite his flaws, stands by Mordecai when it matters most. Their rhythm may be filled with noise, but it is underlined by care. Friendship in their world is not a polished jewel. It is more like a stone, worn smooth by countless waves. Each argument, each mistake, each shared moment of laughter erodes the rough edges, leaving something simple, imperfect, and enduring. This endurance is what makes watching them so soothing. We are invited to witness not just the highs of their connection, but the lows as well, and in both we find reassurance. Because the rhythm always continues. Because the friendship always resets. It is almost as though the park itself breathes in time with them. Its surreal transformations mirror their arguments and reconciliations. Its calm resets reflect their inevitable forgiveness. Together, they and the park form a single rhythm. Inhale, exhale, tension, release, chaos, calm. And so the rhythm of Mordecai and Rigby becomes more than just the story of two friends. It becomes a meditation on connection itself, on how bonds survive, not because they are flawless, but because they endure, on how the presence of another, even in imperfection, can turn chaos into calm. Their friendship is not a clean melody. It is static, uneven, often out of tune. But like static on the radio, it becomes familiar, even comforting. The rhythm repeats endlessly, and in that repetition lies its peace. The world of regular show does not follow ordinary rules of danger. Here, the smallest act can awaken forces that feel ancient, cosmic, or absurd. A coin dropped into an arcade machine, a shortcut taken during chores, a careless argument, each becomes a gateway to the surreal. Suddenly, Mordecai and Rigby find themselves facing threats that defy logic, and yet the tone never drifts into horror. Instead, these encounters carry a peculiar gentleness, as though the universe itself refuses to harm them too deeply. One moment they are janitors in a park, half asleep on the couch. The next, they are battling video game demons in neon-lit arenas, or chased across the sky by geese the size of airplanes. The scale of the threat rises far beyond their own smallness, yet the rhythm of the story calms rather than alarms, because in regular show, the surreal is not meant to terrify. It is meant to awaken the dreamlike possibilities of the ordinary. Consider the way villains emerge. A magical object stirs to life. A routine task mutates into a cosmic battle. The threats feel sudden, almost random, yet they never feel cruel. Even when the characters face destruction, the atmosphere retains a strange softness. The colors glow brighter, the music pulses with synth nostalgia, and the absurdity overwhelms fear. What should be threatening instead becomes hypnotic. The outcomes follow the same pattern. No matter how bizarre or dangerous the conflict becomes, it always dissolves gently. The threat collapses in on itself, often with humor. Monsters vanish, dimensions reset, explosions leave no scars. By the end, the park is whole again. This cycle turns danger into spectacle, something to marvel at rather than fear. It reassures us that chaos, no matter how violent, will always fade into calm. There is a surreal comfort in this repetition. Watching Mordecai and Rigby stumble through battles they cannot understand, we sense their fear, but also their persistence. They run, they argue, they improvise, but they never truly collapse. And when the battle is done, they return to the couch, to the lawn, to the quiet hum of their ordinary lives. It is as though the universe itself protects them, guiding them through danger toward peace. The surreal threats also mirror dreams. In dreams, we often encounter strange monsters, impossible landscapes, sudden danger. Yet when we wake, the memory of those threats carries no real harm. They dissolve like mist, leaving only a vague impression. Regular Show captures this dreamlike rhythm perfectly. Each episode feels like a dream one might recount in the morning. Strange, chaotic, absurd, yet strangely soothing in hindsight. This is why the threats feel less like nightmares and more like challenges in a game. There is tension, yes, but not despair. The outcomes are always forgiving, resetting the stage for the next adventure. In this way, the show redefines danger, not as something to be feared, but as a fleeting moment of surreal spectacle that eventually returns to calm. Even the characters seem aware of this pattern. Mordecai often groans in frustration, as if expecting the surreal escalation. Rigby panics, but his panic is familiar, almost rehearsed. Their reactions create reassurance. If they have survived before, they will survive again. And we, as viewers, settle into the same rhythm, knowing that no matter how intense the threat, the outcome will always be gentle. The park breathes through these threats as well. Each battle, each absurd encounter, is part of its strange rhythm. The park awakens, stretches, roars, then rests again. It is alive, but never cruel. Its threats are simply expressions of its surreal nature, like storms passing through a dream. And when they pass, calm returns, and the cycle begins again. Take, for example, the infamous arcade demon. A simple decision. To play one more round, to prove a point, to chase after a fleeting thrill, summons a being of pure digital rage. The air vibrates with pixelated lightning. The ground trembles, as though the very code of reality is unraveling. In another story, this would mark the descent into terror. But in Regular Show, the moment carries a strange brightness. The lights flash like fireworks. The chaos unfolds like a concert. And the fear is softened by the absurdity of the situation. What should be terrifying instead becomes dazzling. Or consider the geese, creatures that grow beyond their natural size, becoming predators of the sky. They honk with fury, chase with relentless force, and yet the scene feels less like horror and more like slapstick painted on a surreal canvas. Rigby screams, Mordecai strategizes, and together they stumble through the chaos with the awkward grace of dreamers trying to run through fog. We laugh at their fear, but the laughter is not cruel, it is recognition. We too know what it feels like to face impossible odds, to be chased by problems too large to comprehend. And in the end, like the geese, those problems fade. Again and again, the threats escalate to impossible heights, only to collapse back into normality. A time loop spirals out of control, trapping them in endless repetition. A magical keyboard bends the fabric of reality with each careless note. A forgotten promise awakens an ancient being. Each conflict emerges suddenly, shakes their world violently, and then dissolves as though it had never been. The cycle repeats, not with menace, but with rhythm. Surreal threats rise and fall like waves, and Mordecai and Rigby drift upon them like boats carried by a strange tide. What is remarkable is the emotional texture of these outcomes. Even when the park explodes, even when dimensions shatter, the resolution always carries softness. The damage resets, the fear dissolves, the consequences lighten. This is not the cold reset of indifference. It is the gentle reset of a dreamer waking from sleep. You open your eyes, and though you remember the storm, you find yourself safe, untouched, lying in familiar surrounding. The threat lingers only as memory. In this way, regular show teaches us something subtle. Not all dangers are meant to scar. Some are meant to pass through us, leaving no trace but the lesson of survival. The surreal threats Mordecai and Rigby face are overwhelming, yes, but they are never permanent. Each outcome reinforces the idea that chaos can be endured, that conflict can be temporary, that fear can dissolve into calm. This rhythm transforms the viewing experience. Instead of bracing for tragedy, we lean into the absurd. We know the characters will survive. We know the world will reset. And so we can appreciate the spectacle without the weight of dread. The surreal threats become a form of meditation, a way to watch chaos unfold, while remaining secure in the knowledge that peace is inevitable. There is also a strange beauty in how the threats reflect the characters themselves. Rigby's recklessness often summons danger, while Mordecai's caution steers them through it. The threats are not random. They are extensions of their flaws, exaggerated into cosmic form. Yet the outcomes are forgiving, reminding us that flaws do not define us permanently. Mistakes create storms, but storms always pass. This forgiveness is what makes the surreal so calming. In most stories, danger leaves scars. Here it leaves lessons, and lessons, unlike wounds, are gentle. They fade into memory, into laughter, into another lazy afternoon on the park bench. And so the cycle of surreal threats continues, not to harm, but to remind. That life can be absurd, overwhelming, even frightening, but also fleeting. That chaos does not last forever. That even the wildest storm will dissolve into stillness. The surreal threats in regular show carry the weight of myths told in whispers. Ancient beings awaken not from ritual, but from accidents. Cosmic battles erupt, not because of destiny, but because Mordecai and Rigby forgot their responsibilities. A lawnmower left unattended might summon chaos just as easily as a cursed relic from another dimension. This blend of the ordinary and the mythic gives their adventures a dreamlike quality. It feels as though we are watching archetypes unfold, but softened by humor and familiarity. In many ways, their encounters resemble bedtime stories, tales of dragons and demons reshaped into neon and slapstick. The danger is there, yes, but it is painted in bright colors, wrapped in laughter, and resolved before the fear can settle too deeply. It is the kind of danger that entertains rather than terrifies. Like a child listening to a ghost story under blankets, we feel the thrill without the sting. Dream logic is at the heart of these surreal threats. In dreams, fear often emerges suddenly, without explanation. You are running from a creature you have never seen before. You are trapped in a loop with no exit. You are falling endlessly, without ever reaching the ground. And yet the dream always ends. You awaken, safe, and the fear dissolved. Regular show mirrors this pattern perfectly. The threats rise from nowhere, impossible to predict, impossible to prepare for, and then they vanish. Reality resets, and the dreamer continues on. The gentleness of these outcomes is what makes the show feel calming rather than stressful. In our waking lives, problems often linger. Consequences remain, scars stay. But in the surreal world of the park, even the most catastrophic events leave no trace. The park is restored, the friendships remain, the routine resumes. This cycle provides reassurance. No matter how bizarre or overwhelming the chaos becomes, it will not last forever. At times, the threats even feel playful. A magical keyboard that bends reality is dangerous, yes, but it is also fun. The characters experiment with its power, laugh at the absurdity, and only later realize the chaos it unleashes. The threat becomes a game, one that spirals out of control, but never without a spark of humor. The outcomes may erase the damage, but the memory of the laughter remains. Even when the surreal tips toward the frightening, the resolution softens the edge. Consider when they face beings far larger than themselves, towering and godlike in scale. For a moment, the fear feels sharp. The characters cower, we hold our breath. But then, the absurdity rises. The godlike being complains about something petty or is defeated by a trick as simple as pulling a plug. The tension collapses into comedy, and the threat becomes another strange memory in the rhythm of their lives. This cycle echoes the way humans tell stories about chaos and survival. Myths, fables, even dreams. These are ways we process the overwhelming parts of life. Regular show transforms this ancient rhythm into a modern, surreal lullaby. Each episode becomes a parable. Chaos will come, but it will not last. Fear will rise, but it will not stay. You will endure, and afterward, you will laugh. Perhaps this is why the show resonates as both surreal and calming. It presents the impossible, but never lets it linger as despair. It allows us to face strange monsters, collapsing dimensions, and chaotic storms, but always assures us that the outcome will be gentle. It is not a world where threats destroy. It is a world where threats remain. And the reminder is simple, that life, like the park, will always return to balance. What makes these surreal threats so strangely soothing is not just their impermanence, but their rhythm. Each conflict rises quickly, escalates into absurdity, then dissolves with equal swiftness. This creates a cycle that viewers grow accustomed to, a pulse that reassures rather than unsettles. The chaos does not spiral endlessly. It follows a pattern, one we begin to trust. Mordecai and Rigby themselves reinforce this sense of rhythm. Their reactions, though frantic in the moment, become predictable in their variety. Rigby panics, Mordecai groans, both stumble forward, and somehow, against all odds, they manage to survive. It becomes a ritual performance, one we know will always end with the same resolution: the park restored, the friends intact. This predictability, rather than dulling the impact, creates comfort. Much like a familiar song, the repeated structure makes each new surreal threat feel like a verse in a larger melody. The details shift. The villain changes, the chaos takes a new form, but the cadence remains the same. Chaos, climax, collapse, calm, over and over again. It is almost as though the threats themselves are not meant to harm Mordecai and Rigby, but to teach them. Each battle leaves behind a subtle lesson, wrapped in humor. Do not be careless with responsibility. Do not take shortcuts. Do not underestimate the small things. And though the characters rarely change in dramatic ways, the lessons accumulate in the background, adding texture to their endless cycle of misadventures. There is something deeply dreamlike in this. In dreams, the danger often feels real, but the consequences fade upon waking. The lesson, however, lingers, an impression, a symbol, a whisper. Regular show captures this exact sensation. The surreal threats are not scars on the story, but echoes, each one adding to the meditative rhythm of the series. At times, the outcomes even feel merciful. In another universe, Mordecai and Rigby's recklessness might lead to permanent destruction. But here, the universe forgives them again and again. This forgiveness is not earned but granted freely, as though the surreal world itself understands that mistakes are part of being alive, and in that forgiveness lies serenity. It also reflects something human, our ability to recover. Life presents us with storms, unexpected, overwhelming, surreal in their own ways. But often, when the storm passes, we find ourselves intact, even unchanged on the surface. The fear dissolves, the world resets, and we continue forward. The surreal threats of regular show echo this resilience, offering a dreamlike reassurance that no matter how wild the chaos, we will find our way back to calm. This is why the show feels so much like a bedtime story for grown-ups. It allows us to experience danger without consequence, fear without permanence. Each surreal threat becomes a lullaby in disguise, carrying us through the rhythm of chaos and back into rest. Watching Mordecai and Rigby stumble through impossible battles is not just entertaining, it is meditative. And so the surreal threats of regular show are never truly threats at all. They are waves in the park's endless breathing, rising, crashing, fading, and then still again. Their outcomes, always gentle, remind us that not every storm leaves destruction. Some storms pass only to show us how calm the stillness can be. If the surreal threats of regular show are storms, then the still moments are the quiet skies that follow. Between battles with monsters, time loops, and cosmic disasters, the series always pauses. It lingers in moments where nothing extraordinary is happening, where Mordecai and Rigby sit together silent, or where the hum of the park becomes the soundtrack. These pauses are not filler. They are the soul of the show. Stillness arrives in unexpected ways. Sometimes it is Mordecai leaning back with his guitar, strumming a slow tune under the fading light. The sound is simple, imperfect, but soothing, carrying a rhythm that contrasts with the chaos of their adventures. Other times, it is Rigby lying flat on the grass, staring upward at the sky, his mind wandering without urgency. These scenes are brief, but they breathe life into the story. They remind us that calm is as essential as conflict. In the silence, the park feels alive. The wind stirs the trees, the fountain splashes softly, birds circle lazily overhead. These details rarely take center stage, yet they create a backdrop of serenity that balances the absurd. The show is not only about explosions and cosmic battles, it is also about afternoons that stretch long and quiet, where nothing seems to happen at all. These interludes mirror the way life itself unfolds. Our days are not constant action. They are woven with pauses, moments of boredom, of rest, of waiting. In regular show, these moments are given the same weight as the battles. By slowing down, the show reminds us that stillness is not emptiness. It is presence. It is the simple act of being. For Mordecai and Rigby, these pauses also reveal their humanity. Beneath the chaos, they are just two friends trying to exist. They complain, they joke, they dream quietly of better things. In the quiet, their flaws are softened. Rigby's immaturity feels less reckless when he is simply daydreaming. Mordecai's longing feels less heavy when he is simply watching the sunset. The stillness gives them space to simply be themselves without judgment or pressure. The contrast between chaos and calm also deepens the surreal quality of the show. After watching them battle giant monsters or escape collapsing dimensions, the sight of them sitting in silence feels strangely profound. It is as though the world itself exhales after holding its breath. We, as viewers, exhale too. The rhythm of the series is not just chaos, it is chaos balanced by serenity. Sometimes the pauses come in the form of simple conversations. Not epic declarations, but casual words exchanged between friends, talking about what they want for dinner, complaining about chores, sharing small frustrations. These conversations are mundane, but they anchor the surrealism in reality. No matter how strange their adventures become, their humanity remains rooted in these quiet exchanges. The Stillness also carries a nostalgic tone. The lazy afternoons, the sound of cicadas, the soft glow of the TV in the background. These moments feel like echoes of summer days from childhood. They remind us of times when boredom was a kind of freedom, when simply existing with a friend was enough. Regular Show captures that feeling, wrapping it in layers of surreal adventure, but always returning to the simplicity of stillness. And so, between the madness, the show teaches us to value quiet, to notice the pauses, to breathe alongside the characters, because the calm is not a break from the story. It is the heart of it that one of the most tender forms of stillness in Regular Show is found in its nights. When the chaos settles and the park drifts into quiet, Mordecai and Rigby often find themselves outside gazing at the sky. The stars above stretch endlessly, a cosmic reminder of the vastness they sometimes stumble into during their surreal adventures. And yet, under these same stars, there is no threat, only stillness. The night sky becomes a canvas of calm, a contrast to the stormy battles of the day. These nighttime scenes rarely carry dialogue. Instead, they lean to silence. The characters may sigh, glance upward, or simply sit beside each other without words. The absence of conversation is powerful. It reminds us that stillness does not always need to be filled. Sometimes presence alone is enough. Watching two friends share silence beneath the stars feels as profound as any battle against monsters. There are also moments of stillness indoors, a late-night snack, the hum of the refrigerator, the glow of a television screen in a dark room. Mordecai and Rigby sit side by side, chewing without speaking, their attention half on the screen and half on nothing at all. These are not heroic moments, nor are they comedic explosions. They are human pauses, quiet rituals of being alive, the kind of scenes we recognize from our own lives, where nothing happens but everything feels steady. Even regret takes on a gentle quality during these interludes. Mordecai often sits quietly after a mistake, reflecting, lost in thought. Rigby, for all his immaturity, sometimes falls into similar silences, staring at the floor or fiddling with something absent-mindedly. These moments of reflection are rarely highlighted, but they reveal depth. They show that beneath the chaos, the characters do feel, do process, do carry weight. Yet the show never lingers in sadness too long. The stillness is there, but it is soft, never overwhelming. The park itself contributes to these pauses. During the day, its grass and trees glow with sunlight. At night, it rests under the pale wash of moonlight. The fountain trickles, the leaves rustle, and everything feels alive yet hushed. The park in these quiet scenes feels less like a workplace and more like a sanctuary, a breathing space between storms, a reminder that even surreal worlds need rest. Sometimes, stillness takes the shape of small joys. A quiet laugh between Mordecai and Rigby, shared not in the heat of an adventure, but in the calm after it. A lazy nap under a tree, the air warm and unmoving. A moment where they say nothing, yet the weight of their friendship is clear. These joys are fleeting, but they linger in memory long after the chaos of battles fades. The beauty of these pauses is how they balance the rhythm of the show. Without them, the surreal madness would overwhelm. But with them, the chaos feels purposeful. Every storm, every conflict, every cosmic explosion is given meaning because it eventually dissolves into stillness. The pauses remind us that calm is not the absence of story, it is the resolution of it. Perhaps the most profound stillness comes not when Mordecai and Rigby are together, but when they are alone. A shot of Mordecai, quietly sketching, or Rigby, drifting into sleep, carries an intimacy that words cannot capture. In these moments, the characters feel real, fragile, flawed, human. And we as viewers are invited to rest with them. Stillness in regular show is never wasted space. It is the heartbeat between the madness, the silence that makes the sound resonate, the pause that turns chaos into something meaningful. There is a particular kind of stillness that feels soaked in nostalgia. It happens when the characters pause after chaos and simply exist in the ordinary, watching television reruns, playing video games without urgency, or lying on the couch until they drift into sleep. These scenes feel familiar, like echoes of our own past. They remind us of afternoons when time seemed endless, when the glow of a screen or the hum of a fan was enough to carry us through hours. The show captures this atmosphere with tenderness, offering us not just entertainment, but memory. The nostalgia of stillness is also tied to repetition. Mordecai and Rigby often return to the same spots: the couch, the lawn, the snack-filled kitchen. Each place becomes a ritual, a stage for both chaos and calm. Over time, we grow to expect these locations, to feel their presence as grounding forces. The surreal events may spiral outward into other dimensions, but these still moments always bring us back home. Home is not defined by walls, but by the rhythm of rest. Sometimes the stillness is framed in light, the warm glow of sunset washing over the park, the pale silver of moonlight, or even the static glow of the TV screen at night. These lights soften the edges of the world, casting the characters in gentle tones. In such moments, the surrealism feels far away, and what remains is intimacy, an atmosphere of safety where the madness cannot intrude. The stillness also deepens the emotional weight of the show. When Mordecai wrestles with longing, or Rigby reflects on his insecurities, these quiet moments allow space for those feelings. The characters rarely articulate their emotions fully, but the silence speaks for them. A slouched posture, a heavy sigh, a gaze lingering on the horizon, all reveal more than words could. The show trusts stillness to carry meaning, and in doing so, it mirrors the way we often process our own lives. Even humor takes a gentler tone in these pauses. Jokes are softer, laughter is quieter, less frantic. Mordecai and Rigby may share a smirk at something small, or chuckle at the absurdity of their own failures. The humor here is not explosive. It is comforting, like an inside joke between friends that only grows funnier the more it is repeated. For viewers, these pauses create space to breathe. We are not overwhelmed by constant action. Instead, we are invited into the rhythm of life as it truly feels. Waves of chaos balanced by stretches of calm. It is this balance that makes regular show so oddly meditative. We experience both the absurd and the ordinary, and in the stillness, we find ourselves. The nostalgic quality of these moments also reveals something about time. In a world where chaos resets, where threats dissolve without consequence, the only things that linger are these quiet pauses. They are timeless. We can imagine Mordecai and Rigby sitting on that same couch forever, the park humming softly around them, the madness waiting but never intruding. Stillness becomes eternal, more lasting than any battle. Perhaps this is why the quiet moments resonate so deeply. They remind us of our own stillness, the afternoons spent doing nothing, the evenings when silence felt heavier than sound, the memories that stay with us long after the noise fades. Regular show does not only give us chaos, it gives us the gentle gift of recognition. In its stillness, the show whispers, "It is enough to simply exist." Stillness in regular show is never separate from the madness. It is its counterbalance. Without quiet, the chaos would feel empty. Without chaos, the quiet would lose meaning. Together they form a rhythm that makes the series feel almost musical. Crescendos of absurdity, followed by soft, drifting notes of calm. Think of an episode where the stakes rise to impossible levels. A villain threatens reality, a machine spirals out of control, or the park is caught in cosmic disaster. The tension builds, the visuals grow wild, and we are carried into surreal extremes. And then, silence. The thread ends, the park resets, and we see Mordecai and Rigby again in a small, quiet space. They may be tired, lying on the couch, or simply standing in the park, relieved. The shift feels like exhaling after holding your breath. The stillness is not a break from the story. It is the story's resolution. This rhythm mirrors life itself. We all experience chaos, moments of panic or intensity. But those moments always give way to quiet. The silence after laughter, the pause after tears, the stillness of a normal day after extraordinary events. Regular show captures this universal truth, embedding it in its surreal narrative. In doing so, it transforms a cartoon about two slackers into something quietly profound. Stillness also carries a dreamlike quality. The show often feels like a dream in motion, where logic bends and impossible events unfold. But just as in dreams, the strangest parts eventually fade into calm. We wake not in terror, but in quiet, sometimes confused, sometimes thoughtful, but always steady. Regular show mirrors this dream rhythm, its stillness grounding the viewer even after the strangest adventures. There is also an unspoken spirituality in these pauses. The quiet moments suggest that life does not need to be filled with noise or action to be meaningful. Watching Mordecai strum his guitar under the fading sun, or Rigby lying still on the grass, teaches us that peace is found in simplicity. These scenes are not about victory or achievement. They are about being present. In that presence, there is a kind of wisdom. Friendship itself is also illuminated by stillness. While chaos tests their bond, it is the quiet where their connection feels most real. Silence does not push them apart. It binds them closer. True friendship is not always about action. It is about comfort in the absence of words. The stillness between Mordecai and Rigby is proof of their bond as much as their wild adventures are. Even the structure of the series respects this rhythm. Episodes rarely end in explosive triumph. More often, they close with a quiet return to normality, a reset, a breath, a moment where the characters sit with the aftermath. In these endings, the absurd collapses into calm, reminding us that chaos never defines them fully. What remains is stillness, safety, and the enduring hum of everyday life. For viewers, this pattern becomes meditative. We laugh at the absurdities, marvel at the surreal, but what stays with us is the calm after, the lingering image of two friends on a couch, staring blankly at a screen, is strangely more powerful than any battle they fought. The stillness becomes the emotional anchor of the show. And so regular show teaches us something subtle but profound, that stillness is not absence but presence. It is not wasted time but sacred space. In the quiet we find rest, meaning, and connection. In the quiet we remember that life is not just storms and explosions, it is also sunsets, silence, and laughter that fades into sighs. The stillness between the madness is not just part of the show, it is its heart. There is a hum that runs beneath regular show, subtle but ever-present. A nostalgic rhythm that pulls the viewer into a space both familiar and timeless. It's in the glowing arcade cabinets, in the synth-heavy music that rises during battles, in the VHS-like distortions that bend reality. This nostalgia is not loud or forceful. It drifts like background static, comforting and constant, evoking memories of afternoons long gone, but never fully lost. Nostalgia in regular show is not about a specific time period alone, though the 1980s references are unmistakable. It is more about a feeling, the way the past lingers in sound and color, in the textures of old technology and the warmth of shared experiences. Each glowing pixel, each cassette tape, each synth chord becomes a portal to a collective memory, one where childhood and imagination blend seamlessly. The show's creators use these elements with intention. When chaos erupts, the soundtrack often shifts into synthwave, neon energy pulsing like the heart of a forgotten arcade. The music does more than set the mood. It unlocks a memory. For many, it recalls the era of VHS tapes, late-night reruns, and the soft fuzz of static on the screen. For others, it creates a timeless dream of a past they may never have lived, but still somehow recognize. Nostalgia here is less about history and more about atmosphere. Objects, too, carry this nostalgic weight. A video game console becomes the catalyst for a cosmic battle. A cassette tape unspools into an otherworldly threat. Even something as simple as an old sofa becomes a throne of endless afternoons. These objects are ordinary, yet charged with the surreal. They reflect the way childhood often transforms the mundane into the magical. The way a simple arcade machine could feel like a portal to another dimension. What makes this nostalgia unique is its gentleness. It does not demand that we yearn for the past or feel sorrow for its loss. Instead, it presents the past as alive, folded seamlessly into the present. The park may be caught in impossible battles, but those battles are framed in colors and sounds that carry the softness of memory. Nostalgia here is calming, not haunting. It reassures us that the past is not gone. It breathes within the now. Mordecai and Rigby themselves embody this nostalgia, their slackerdom, their laziness, their love for games and simple pleasures. These qualities mirror the rhythms of youth. Watching them bicker on the couch or get lost in trivial pursuits feels like watching fragments of our own past selves. Their world is surreal, yes, but also deeply familiar. They remind us of afternoons where time seemed endless, where the biggest concern was which game to play next, or how to avoid responsibility for just a little longer. In this way, regular show taps into a universal memory. Even if we never lived through the 80s, even if we did not grow up with arcades or VHS tapes, we still recognize the feeling. Nostalgia here transcends decades. It is the memory of being young, of living in a world where the ordinary shimmered with possibility. The surreal nature of the show only amplifies this effect. When old technology comes alive or retro music transforms into cosmic energy, it is as if the memories themselves are refusing to stay quiet. Nostalgia becomes a force of its own, a strange calming current that shapes every adventure. And through it all, there is a sense of peace. The chaos may rage, but the nostalgia soothes. It reminds us that we have been here before in one form or another, that the strange is not frightening but familiar, that the past, however surreal, is a safe place to rest. The objects of regular show are drenched in nostalgia, not simply as props, but as portals. An old arcade machine is never just a machine. It's a doorway into another reality, humming with neon energy. The moment Mordecai and Rigby drop a coin into the slot, the world tilts, lights flash, music pulses, and suddenly they are no longer in a quiet park. They are warriors inside a living arcade. The absurdity is real, but the atmosphere is comforting. For anyone who remembers the weight of an arcade token or the flicker of a screen in a dark room, the imagery stirs a calm recognition. VHS tapes, too, carry this strange power. The show often leans into glitch effects, static lines crawling across the screen, distorted sounds echoing like warped memories. These visual quirks are not random. They mimic the feeling of rewinding an old tape, of watching a favorite cartoon degrade over time, of nostalgia made physical, and yet, instead of sadness, these distortions feel warm. They remind us that imperfection itself can be beautiful, that memories, even frayed, still glow. Cassette players, bulky televisions, worn-out game controllers, each retro object radiates a sense of familiarity. For Mordecai and Rigby, these are tools of escape. For the viewer, they are invitations into memory. When the characters battle a giant cassette monster or face a haunted video game, we are reminded of our own experiences with these relics. We remember the way plastic buttons clicked, the way screens hummed faintly, the way music hissed from tapes. The surreal is woven tightly with the real, and the calm of recognition underlies even the strangest scenes. The soundtrack deepens this nostalgic spell. Synthesizers swell during climaxes, evoking both 80s arcades and dreamlike haze. Electric drums pulse, shimmering with retro energy. These sounds are more than decoration. They shape the emotional core of the series. They make every absurd battle feel like a memory rather than a nightmare, every cosmic threat softened by the glow of familiarity. The music guides us into a liminal space where past and present overlap, where surreal adventures feel strangely safe. Colors also play a crucial role. Neon pinks, deep purples, glowing blues, these hues pulse across battles and distortions, echoing the palette of retro aesthetics. Even when the show pushes into wild absurdities, the colors ground us in a familiar dreamscape. The glow of an arcade screen, the static light of a TV, the orange wash of a sunset. All these shades become anchors of memory. They soothe us, reminding us of evenings spent surrounded by light and sound, when the world felt endless. The nostalgia is not limited to objects and aesthetics. It exists in the rhythms of the characters themselves. Mordecai and Rigby's laziness, their endless afternoons of games and TV, are themselves nostalgic. They embody a stage of life that feels eternal, the slow drift of youth when responsibilities hover at the edges but never fully intrude. Watching them slack off is calming because it recalls the feeling of time unstructured, when boredom itself was a form of freedom. And yet, regular show does not treat nostalgia as static. It sets it in motion. The past is not frozen in the series. It is alive, breathing, mutating into surreal adventures. A VHS tape may come alive, An arcade may spiral into chaos, but these transformations are not frightening. They are playful, absurd, even soothing in their predictability. Nostalgia here is not about clinging to what is gone. It is about watching the past dance, evolve, and loop endlessly in new forms. In this way, the show reframes nostalgia. It is not a source of sorrow for lost time. It is a gentle current that carries us forward, reminding us that the feelings we once had, the glow of screens, the hum of music, the endless afternoons, are not truly gone. They live on, reimagined in the surreal adventures of Mordecai and Rigby. Nostalgia in regular show is rarely presented as a static snapshot. It flows like a dream. Instead of freezing the past in place, the series reanimates it, bending memory into surreal shapes. The glow of a television set might become the light of another dimension. A song from a cassette tape might open a portal. A forgotten arcade game might come alive, pulling its players into a pixelated war. These moments feel bizarre, yet they are not jarring. They resonate like half-remembered dreams where the logic of memory shifts, but the feeling remained the same. This blending of nostalgia and surrealism creates a strange kind of calm. When a memory is distorted into something fantastical, it becomes less about accuracy and more about emotion. A warped VHS screen is not about the technology itself. It is about the feeling of watching something late at night, when the static hum of the television filled the silence. Regular show takes that feeling and amplifies it through surreal storytelling. The result is soothing, like being rocked by waves of memory, even if the shapes of those memories have changed. What makes this nostalgia so powerful is its universality. You don't need to have lived through the 80s or grown up with VHS tapes to understand it. The show taps into a collective memory of what it feels like to be young, surrounded by strange objects that felt larger than life. The surreal exaggerations remind us that childhood always had a dreamlike quality. Toys seemed magical, games felt infinite, afternoons stretched forever. Nostalgia in regular show is not tied to a decade. It is tied to a state of being. And because it is dreamlike, the nostalgia is also gentle. Instead of demanding we long for the past, it creates a space where the past and present coexist. Watching Mordecai and Rigby live inside this blend is calming because it reassures us the past is never truly gone. Its textures, sounds, and rhythms echo forward, reshaping themselves but never disappearing. The absurdity of the show becomes a comfort because it tells us that memory is alive and playful, not lost or mournful. Even the structure of the episodes reflects this dreamlike nostalgia. The stories often begin with something ordinary, a video game, a snack, a song, a lazy afternoon. Slowly, the ordinary slips into the surreal until the characters are swept up in chaos. And yet by the end, the world resets. Mordecai and Rigby return to their couch, their game, their snack. The cycle repeats like a memory replayed over and over. This looping rhythm feels like nostalgia itself. Events blur, time bends, but the feeling of home, of return, is constant. The calm of nostalgia is also present in the way the show uses humor. Even when the adventures spiral into absurdity, the tone is never harsh. Mistakes are softened by laughter. Failures dissolve into resets, and threats vanish like dreams upon waking. The humor wraps the surreal in warmth, turning chaos into something safe. For viewers, this humor feels like remembering embarrassing childhood stories, cringe-inducing in the moment, but funny and harmless in hindsight. Nostalgia transforms mistakes into gentle memories. At its core, Regular Show shows us that nostalgia is not a trap, but a rhythm. It flows through time, weaving the absurd with the ordinary, the past with the present. By placing retro objects and sounds at the heart of surreal adventures, the show turns memory into motion, alive, dreamlike, and calming. The true power of nostalgia in Regular Show lies not in the details of retro aesthetics, but in the emotions they awaken. It is less about cassette tapes, neon colors, or arcade cabinets, and more about the feeling they create. A soft reminder that the past is always within reach, reshaped, but not erased. When Mordecai strums a guitar under the fading light, it is not just a character moment. It evokes the memory of quiet evenings when music drifted lazily through the air. When Rigby loses himself in a video game, it is not just another gag. It mirrors the hours we once spent immersed in screens, believing the world outside could wait. These scenes resonate because they echo rhythms we have lived. The surreal adventures amplify these echoes rather than replace them. A haunted VHS tape, a living arcade, a cassette that unleashes chaos. These absurdities are exaggerations of real memories. They are dreamlike distortions of the past, where nostalgia becomes tangible, alive, and unpredictable. And yet, the effect is calming, because even when the memories twist, the core feeling is unchanged. The past is familiar, safe, and endlessly looping. Nostalgia in Regular Show also softens the edges of time. Instead of presenting youth as something lost, it offers it as something eternal. Mordecai and Rigby never fully grow up. Their slackerdom, their endless afternoons, their refusal to move on, they are frozen in a loop of memory. For viewers, this is not frustrating, but soothing. It reassures us that somewhere, in some corner of imagination, the stage of life still exists. Time bends, but the essence of youth remains. This timelessness is what makes the show feel both retro and eternal. The 80s-inspired energy is obvious, but it never feels dated. Instead, it feels mythic, like the memory of an era rather than the era itself. The synth music, the glowing screens, the pixelated battles, all point to something larger. The idea that memory itself is a force, capable of shaping worlds. Nostalgia becomes a lens through which the surreal is softened, transformed into something peaceful. And in the quiet moments, after the battles, after the resets, we feel that nostalgia most strongly. The characters sink into their couch. The park hums softly in the background. The TV glows faintly. Nothing extraordinary happens, but the atmosphere is charged with recognition. We have been here before in our own lives, in our own quiet spaces. The nostalgia is not tied to their specific world. It flows into ours. Perhaps this is why Regular Show feels so strangely calming. It does not use nostalgia to trap us in longing or regret. It uses nostalgia to create presence, to remind us that the feelings we once knew, the glow of afternoons, the hum of old machines, the rhythm of lazy friendships, still live within us. They are not gone. They return in dreams, in surreal adventures, in soft moments of stillness. By putting nostalgia in motion, the show transforms memory into comfort. It tells us that the past is not fragile, not distant, but alive, ready to resurface in strange, calming ways. Regular Show does not simply show us adventures. It shows us echoes of our own lives, layered in neon, wrapped in laughter, softened by the glow of memory. And in this glow, nostalgia becomes not just a look back, but a place to rest. What sets Regular Show apart from other animated worlds is not simply its absurdity, but its gentleness. Surrealism, in most stories, is a tool of disorientation, meant to unsettle or disturb. But here, surrealism is softened, wrapped in humor, nostalgia, and calm. The result is a dreamscape that feels not threatening, but strangely safe. The absurd adventures of Mordecai and Rigby often begin in the ordinary. A broken lawnmower, a misplaced video game, a forgotten chore, each is a small seed. From that seed grows chaos. The lawnmower becomes a monster. The game becomes a portal. The chore spirals into cosmic disaster. And yet, no matter how bizarre the escalation, the story always circles back. The park resets, the characters laugh, and the rhythm of life resumes. This looping structure gives the surrealism its gentle quality. Nothing is permanent, and no chaos lingers for long. In many ways, the show's surrealism mirrors the logic of dreams. Objects awaken, time bends, danger rises and dissolves. But like dreams, the adventures are fleeting, never truly harmful. They leave impressions rather than scars. Even the most intense conflicts dissolve into humor or stillness, fading like morning fog. The surreal is not here to haunt us. It is here to remind us of life's strangeness, its unpredictability, its beauty. Part of what makes the surrealism so gentle is the grounding presence of the characters themselves. Mordecai and Rigby are not heroes in the traditional sense. They are not strong, wise, or disciplined. They are lazy, flawed, often careless. Yet their humanity softens the chaos around them. When they face cosmic villains or impossible creatures, they do so not with courage, but with confusion, jokes, and friendship. This ordinariness turns surreal threats into something approachable. We do not fear for them. We laugh with them, we recognize ourselves in them, and in doing so, the absurd becomes calming. Surrealism is also gentle, because it always gives way to stillness. After battles end, after villains vanish, after dimensions collapse, the show lingers in quiet. The characters return to their couch, their games, their snacks. The park hums softly again. The madness fades into presence. This rhythm reassures us that no matter how strange life becomes, it will always settle back into something steady. The dream always returns to calm. Even the aesthetics of the surreal are designed with softness. Neon lights glow, but they never burn. Static flickers, but it hums rather than screams. Monsters and villains are absurd, exaggerated, often silly. The surrealism is wrapped in play, making it a playground rather than a nightmare. The strangeness is not meant to push us away. It invites us in, like a dream we want to linger inside. Regular show, at its core, uses surrealism to remind us of the safety in strangeness. Life itself is surreal. Objects fail, time bends, unexpected things happen every day. But the show teaches us that the surreal does not need to be frightening. It can be funny, nostalgic, even peaceful. It can carry us into absurdity only to bring us back to calm. This is why the surreal tone of the show feels so unique. It does not reject reality, it stretches it. It takes the ordinary and lets it unravel into impossibility, then gently ties it back together. The loop is endless, and within it, there is comfort. At the heart of regular show's surrealism lies friendship. The show's impossible scenarios would feel chaotic, even harsh, if not for the grounding presence of Mordecai and Rigby's bond. They are lazy, they bicker, they often make things worse. But when the surreal spirals out of control, their friendship steadies the rhythm. Whether they're facing an intergalactic villain or being chased by giant animals, their connection transforms the chaos into something manageable. The surreal is softened by laughter, by inside jokes, by the simple fact that they are never alone. This bond turns the surreal into a shared dream, Alone, the characters might crumble under the weight of cosmic absurdity. Together, they move through it with a kind of casual resilience. Their failures are softened because they fail together. Their victories, however small, feel larger because they are shared. In this way, the surreal is not isolating. It is communal, shaped by the rhythms of friendship. The dreamlike quality of the show also transforms memory. Each surreal adventure feels like something that might linger in the back of one's mind after waking. Half-remembered, strange, but strangely comforting. A battle with a video game boss, a dance-off against a cosmic entity, a chase with giant geese. These stories echo the way memory blends with imagination. They are surreal, but they resonate because they mirror how we remember our own past, not with precision, but with feeling. Even the mistakes of Mordecai and Rigby are softened by this gentle surrealism. Their errors often unleash chaos, but the surreal bends around them, forgiving rather than punishing. Monsters dissolve, timelines reset, conflicts fade into nothing. The surreal acts like a dream where nothing is permanent, where mistakes are lessons rather than scars. For viewers, this is calming. It reassures us that imperfection is survivable, that chaos is temporary, that we can wake into stillness again. The show also uses surrealism to highlight the rhythm of everyday life. A chore spirals into a cosmic crisis, but by the end, the chore is still there. A video game becomes a battle for reality, but eventually, the game ends and the day moves on. These loops echo the way ordinary life feels. Small tasks sometimes feel overwhelming, crises erupt suddenly, but eventually everything resets. The surreal exaggerates this cycle, but it also validates it. It tells us that life's absurdity is natural, and that we can move through it without fear. Another way the surrealism stays gentle is through humor. Even in the strangest scenarios, the tone remains playful. Villains are absurd rather than terrifying. Battles are dramatic, but often ridiculous. The humor works like a cushion, softening the strangeness so that it never becomes overwhelming. We laugh, and the surreal becomes less threatening, more like a story told among friends than a nightmare lived alone. This combination of surreal absurdity and gentle rhythm gives the series a meditative quality. We know the pattern. Chaos will rise, the surreal will stretch reality, and then everything will return to calm. This predictability is comforting. It turns the surreal into a ritual, something we can trust rather than fear. Like a recurring dream, it becomes familiar, even soothing. In the end, regular show shows us that surrealism does not have to unsettle. It can be a tool for calm, a mirror of memory, a stage for friendship. It stretches the ordinary into impossibility, but always circles back, reminding us that the strange is not something to fear. It is part of life's rhythm, woven with stillness, humor, and warmth. The surrealism of regular show works like a dream loop, expansive, unpredictable, but always safe to return to. Each episode opens a door into strangeness, but that door never leads to despair. Instead, it leads us into a playful unknown where imagination runs wild, and then gently guides us back to where we began. This rhythm creates not just entertainment, but comfort. It reassures us that no matter how strange things become, the world will settle again. Think of the way dreams feel when they are not nightmares, but drifting landscapes. You might find yourself flying or speaking with animals or reliving an old memory with impossible details. The dream is illogical, but it is not frightening. You wander through it with curiosity rather than fear. Regular show captures this exact sensation. Its surrealism does not seek to shock or unsettle. It seeks to immerse, to wrap the viewer in a calm sense of wonder. This is why the show often lingers in transitions. Before the chaos begins, we see quiet moments. Mordecai and Rigby lounging, Benson scolding, Pops humming to himself. After the chaos ends, the quiet returns. The surreal adventures exist within these bookends of normalcy, as if the park itself were a dreamer, drifting between waking and sleeping. The gentleness comes not from denying chaos, but from balancing it with stillness. The timelessness of the show is also rooted in this looping surrealism. Episodes rarely reference larger continuity, and even when they do, the surreal resets allow them to stand alone. Each adventure is its own dream, beginning and ending in the park's familiar rhythm. For viewers, this means the show can be revisited endlessly, without losing its calming effect. Like returning to a favorite dream, the familiarity only deepens the comfort. Another layer of gentleness comes from the way surrealism blurs fear into play. A monster may chase Mordecai and Rigby, but its design is exaggerated, often humorous. A cosmic threat may emerge, but it is wrapped in neon lights, retro music, and absurd stakes. Even in moments of supposed danger, the tone invites us to laugh. The surreal does not erase fear, but it reframes it, turning what could be terrifying into something absurd and therefore manageable. This softening has an emotional impact on viewers. For those facing the uncertainties of real life, the show offers reassurance. Yes, things will spiral out of control. Yes, the ordinary will sometimes stretch into the absurd, but it will pass. The chaos will fade. The surreal will dissolve, leaving us in the same safe place where we began. This message is not spoken directly, but felt through the rhythm of every episode. Even nostalgia is wrapped into this dream loop. The retro aesthetics, arcades, VHS tapes, synth music, are surreal in themselves because they exist outside of time. For younger viewers, they feel like glimpses into a dream of the past. For older viewers, they feel like memories returning in strange, colorful ways. In either case, the effect is calming. Nostalgia blends with surrealism to create a sense that time itself is flexible, looping like the structure of the show. And perhaps that is why regular show remains so beloved. It is not just absurd, not just funny, not just nostalgic. It is a surreal dream that knows how to calm. Its absurdity never overwhelms. Its loops never exhaust. Instead, it becomes a safe space for the imagination. A reminder that even the strangest adventures can feel like home when framed with gentleness. In this way, the show captures something rare, surrealism as a form of peace. When we step back and look at the world of regular show, we see more than just surreal comedy, and we see a rhythm, almost meditative in nature. The show does not bombard us with endless noise or overwhelming intensity. Instead, it breathes. Chaos rises. Laughter fills the air. Strangeness bends reality. And then everything returns to stillness. Like inhaling and exhaling, the surrealism comes and goes in a natural rhythm that calms rather than unsettles. This rhythm is what transforms the series into something timeless. It reminds us that surrealism does not always need to be heavy or unsettling. It can be playful, safe, even comforting. It can invite us to drift along with it, like a dream that surprises us without ever harming us. The strangeness becomes familiar, the chaos becomes ritual, and the absurd becomes gentle. At the center of this gentleness is the park itself. It is not just a workplace or a backdrop. It is the anchor of the dream. No matter how far Mordecai and Rigby travel into the impossible, They always return to this space. The benches, the trees, the hum of ordinary life. They are symbols of calm. The surreal adventures may stretch beyond galaxies, but the park reminds us that there is always a home to return to. This constant reset makes the show's surrealism reassuring. No matter what happens, there is stability waiting. The characters, too, embody this cycle of safety. Mordecai and Rigby are reckless, but they are also reliable in their own way. Their bond assures us that they will face the surreal together, no matter what form it takes. Benson, Pops, Skips, and the rest create a community that grounds the chaos. Even when reality bends, these characters anchor it with humor, personality, and warmth. Their presence makes the surreal not just bearable, but welcoming. Perhaps the greatest gift of regular show is that it redefines what surrealism can mean. For many, the word surreal brings to mind disorientation, fear, or unease. But here, surrealism becomes soft. It becomes a lens through which we see life's absurdity as something to laugh at, to embrace, to move through without fear. It becomes a dream, not of darkness, but of light. When an episode ends and the characters sink back into stillness, we are left with a feeling that is rare in surreal storytelling: peace. The journey has been strange, yes, but not threatening. It has carried us into impossible places, only to return us gently to the familiar. The gentleness is what lingers, what makes the show feel like a comforting dream we can revisit again and again. And so regular show becomes more than just entertainment. It becomes a quiet philosophy of its own, that strangeness is not something to be feared, that life's chaos is temporary, softened by friendship, humor, and nostalgia, that the surreal, rather than pulling us apart, can actually bring us closer to each other, to our memories, and to a gentler way of seeing the world. Like a looping dream, the series leaves us with a reminder. Not all surreal journeys are frightening. Some are peaceful, some are playful, some are exactly what we need to drift, to breathe, to rest. And that is the gentle surrealism of regular show. Good night.